The Lanterns are not in this universe anymore. Hal Jordan is a renegade, and the people of Earth don't even know what's happened. Things couldn't possibly get any worse. Could they? Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read it dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. There are 2 more Hal Jordan stories before we hit Rebirth. We wanted to do this as one giant video, but the fact is they are basically 2 storylines, so that's 2 videos. So let's discuss his original return back home. Through their travels, Hal Jordan, Virgo, and Trapper have found themselves floating above Earth's orbit. They have been journeying throughout the galaxy, helping wherever they can, and Hal felt like going home. He wanted to check on his little brother Jim, so he decides to let Virgo take command of Darlene, their ship, while he's away. Virgo suggests that he go with Hal, but Hal tells him that the sight of aliens on Earth may draw some attention that they don't need right now, so he's going to head out alone on this one. After heading into Coast City and almost getting arrested by Jim's home alarm, Hal asks him how things are, and if Simon Baz is still coming around. Jim is in shock because he hasn't heard from Hal in a while, and Simon has been missing. That's why he got the alarm system. But none of this matters. Why are you here, Hal? Hal explains to Jim that the Green Lanterns, they just disappeared. So for now, he's going to stick with Jim for a bit to make sure that things are okay. Jim tells him sure, but there's only one condition, and that's that he gets a haircut. The long hair really isn't looking good on him. A short while later, Hal looks at himself with his new haircut, and he asks when did Jim become a barber? And Jim tells him it's to save money in a family of 4. Believe him, it helps. But now it's time for Sue, his wife, to get the kids, and Jim knows just the place to go meet up with all of them. So they all go to the fair, and the Ferris wheel operator receives a package for some equipment to repair the ride. The operator tells the man that he's not sure why. He keeps everything top notch, but oh well. But before he can leave, the operator asks him where his accent is from. He's never heard of it. The man explains Medora. The operator is even more confused because he's never heard of Medora, but oh well. So Hal and Jim walk down the rows of attractions, and they finally meet up with Jim's wife Sue and his kids. Hal spoils them with gifts that he bought with Jim's money, and the kids decide that they all want to go in the Ferris wheel with their new toys. Hal and Jim stay back and watch the kids as they ride the Ferris wheel, but soon, while everyone begins to gather and talk loud, an explosion goes off, knocking everyone to the ground. Jim struggles to call out for his kids, but he notices that the Ferris wheel is beginning to crack. Just as it's about to tip over, Hal flies up and creates a giant pair of arms to grab and hold onto the Ferris wheel, holding it in place. But while Hal is helping everyone get down, he hears Sue calling to her son Howard, begging him to say something. He was injured in all of this. Hal watches and he tells himself, God, help him. He's so sorry. However, up in orbit, body parts of some yellow lanterns drift around and a man stands among them, stating how this universe is unguarded. It lives in darkness beyond the twilight. But fear not, Parallax will bring the dawn. Parallax is a version of Hal Jordan that killed every Green Lantern in another universe a long time ago, and he's now displaced from his timeline. Later, Hal sits in the hospital with the other victims of the explosion, feeling like he should have been able to stop it. He should have been able to save everyone. But while speaking with an older woman about what happened, a news report comes on the TV. The reporter states that a man calling himself Sonar is claiming to be the one responsible for the Coast City attack. He tells everyone that the UN will need to have an emergency session to discuss granting the territory of Medora rights as a sovereign nation, and if not, more people will die. The world has 2 days. Hal says that he will find Sonar. He knows just who to ask, so he goes over to Gotham City and he makes a lantern symbol in the sky until he hears a voice telling him that he's out of his jurisdiction. When he turns around, he sees Batman, or at least the guy who is Batman right now in the giant Batman suit. This is actually Jim Gordon, and these events are taking place during the period in which Bruce Wayne has amnesia and isn't currently Batman. Hal tells him that if he's supposed to be the role of Batman, he's supposed to let people see his chin. But Hal goes on to tell him that he's here because he needs help. He needs to know everything that Batman knows about Sonar and his terrorist organization. Named Baito Walden, he worked his way up and became the leader of the Medorian separatist army by killing the previous leaders. He stated that these leaders did nothing and just talked. After planting a bomb that was detonated by the sound of the various leaders of the organization, he took over. But there is little information as to where he is. All anyone knows is that he has a training camp in Kahndaq. Batman also mentions that this information isn't really public, so if any word of it gets out, it will cause mass hysteria. A short while later, Hal arrives at the training camp in Kahndaq while the MSA fire at a firing range. The commander walks off to have a smoke, and that's when he notices that the soldiers have stopped firing, and he turns back to see all of the soldiers with green guns pointing at them. Hal demands to know where Sonar is, and the commander asks him, "Do you think we're afraid of you?" The commander spits his cigarette at Hal, telling him that it is he who should be afraid, and then he tells the soldiers to state their purpose. "We fight for Sonar! We die for our country! Words are meaningless without action! Free Medora!" And then the devices in the back of the soldiers' necks all charge from that sound, and then their heads explode. Hal looks in shock, but the commander tells him he can't stop them. There is no greater honor. Free Medora! And in a flash, his head also explodes. Filled with rage as to what these men did, Hal screams Sonar's name, and he begins to level the entire training facility until there is nothing left. Falling to his knees, he asks, "Howard, what do I do? Please don't die." But back up in orbit in Space Sector 0, where the remains of Planet Oa drifts, Parallax looks to see that the Green Lanterns are gone. He states that this can't be. He's traveled the universe with the power to destroy worlds. He just has to recreate one. So he tries to pull the rocks together and nothing happens. He destroyed the Green Lanterns in his universe. He consumed their power, but he was too late to save this one. But if Coast City can still survive, he will save that, even if that means the Hal Jordan of this timeline must die. In his universe, he was driven mad and turned into the villain Parallax at the loss of Coast City when Mongol destroyed it. Hal goes back to Jim's apartment and he begins to watch the news as the report of Sonar's training camp being destroyed is hitting the news. And it seems that this has made things worse as the US did not claim the destruction was on their side. Sonar announced that there would be an immediate retaliation if the UN does not act on his demands. But watching this just gets Hal even angrier. So angry that the willpower force in his gauntlet explodes, destroying everything around him. He sits back down and he hears Jim ask him what the hell just happened. But as Hal tries to explain, Jim tells him, "You know what? Don't bother, I just need some clothes for Sue and Jane." Hal tells him that it was he who destroyed Sonar's camp. It was just because of what he saw what happened to Howard. But Jim stops him and tells him, "Do not put this on my son. If this thing starts World War III, it will be on your shoulders, Hal, not Howard's." Hal steps back and tells Jim, "I'm sorry." Then Jim tells him not to apologize. He did make things worse. Jim begins to pull out a radio and set it to the news report about the UN finally having a gathering. And he mentions that this is the time that they will finally do something other than just talk. And those words make Hal realize what's about to happen. Talk is cheap. He suits up and he flies out. He flies over to New York and he heads into the UN's General Assembly building. Inside, the president talks about the current issues that they are facing with the recent bombing, but that's when Hal flies in, knocking out the guards. And he announces, "Everyone shut up!" Before anyone else can talk, he puts plates over everyone's mouths to stop them from asking questions. Then he takes all of their translator devices. Sonar, watching the TV, states that Medora will be silent no longer, and he presses a button. Soon, all of the translators begin to beep, and Hal tells everyone to get down. He manages to contain the blast, and everyone begins to cheer him for saving everyone, but over in Sonar's hideout, a soldier asks what they do next. Everyone begins to pack up and leave, and Sonar tells them that they will rebuild, and after blowing up their hideout, he tells them that they will rebuild from Medora. Back in the hospital, Howard begins to open his eyes, and Sue jumps up to hug him. Jim runs out to the waiting room to call in Hal, and he tells him it's like Dad always said, and Hal finishes the sentence, stating, "No one can keep a Jordan down." But up in Earth's orbit, Parallax is looking down on Earth, and he states that he knows that Hal Jordan is there, and he won't let him destroy Coast City again. And that brings us to the conclusion of the first storyline, which is all about the entire UN situation. The second storyline is about Parallax. So next week, you're going to see Hal Jordan fighting Parallax. Probably a dream come true for a lot of Green Lantern fans. Hope you guys enjoy, and I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Comicstorian and Instagram at Comicstorian, and I'll see you next time right here.